Before I open the doors to my life and invite you into a story that still tightens my chest, I ask for a small favor. Please subscribe to the channel, tap the like button, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. It reminds me that pain, when shared, does not echo in emptiness. Now get comfortable. This is not a story about heroes or villains. It's a story about love that stayed too long and the courage it took to finally let go. I was not supposed to be on that plane. I am not an impulsive woman. I never have been. My life was built on lists, calendars, and careful planning. For 30 years, I ran a logistics business. Missed deadlines were sins, surprises were enemies, and emotions were luxuries I rarely allowed myself. But 3 days of silence can undo a lifetime of discipline. 3 days of unanswered calls from my son. 3 days of messages marked delivered but never read. And one final voicemail from my daughter-in-law that I replayed so many times the sound of it began to haunt my dreams. Her voice wasn't crying. That's what frightened me. It was thin. Fractured, like a thread stretched too far. "Mom, I'm just tired. I'll call you later." Later never came. That night, I didn't sleep. Anxiety sat under my ribs like a block of ice. By morning, I stopped lying to myself. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, so I did something I had never done before. I packed a small suitcase, bought a ticket for the next flight, and flew halfway across the country without telling a soul. Not even my son. In my tote bag, tucked between paperwork and a change of clothes, were 2 glass jars of homemade elderberry preserves. Dark, tart, healing, the kind my son Sterling used to eat by the spoonful when he was little, standing barefoot in our kitchen back in Chicago. Next to the jars was a small, plush teddy bear. I stared at it before leaving the house and almost put it back. She's not pregnant, I told myself. This is silly. But something in me insisted. Sometimes, when we don't know what to bring, the airport buzzed with life when I arrived. Rolling suitcases, coffee machines hissing, people hugging, laughing, rushing toward reunions. I felt none of it. Instead, I felt like I was walking underwater. The phone in my coat pocket stayed silent. I checked it obsessively. No missed calls. No messages. I called Sterling again while waiting to board. Ring. Ring. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message this time. The flight felt endless. Clouds passed beneath us like torn cotton, and I tried to distract myself with a book, but the words blurred. Every few minutes, my mind returned to the same questions. Why hadn't Vada called? Why hadn't Sterling answered? Why did my chest feel like it was collapsing inward? You can't fool a mother's heart. My own mother used to say. I used to smile at that phrase. I don't smile anymore. The southern air hit me the moment I stepped out of the terminal. Thick, humid, heavy. So different from the sharp northern wind I was used to. The Uber ride to their neighborhood took about 40 minutes. I watched the city pass by through the window. Palm trees, neon signs, brick buildings glowing under the afternoon sun. Sterling loved this city, said it made him feel important. The building finally came into view. A historic brick condo, pre-war, high ceilings, gated courtyard. I had bought it for them 3 years ago, right after the wedding. I remember the pride I felt signing those papers. They'll be safe here, I thought. They'll never know what it means to count pennies. I believed money could protect them from life. I was wrong. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt unnaturally long. When I stepped out into the hallway, my heart skipped. Their door was not fully closed, just slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. I pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Stale tobacco smoke, old alcohol, something sour, like wine gone bad. This was not how Vada kept her home. My shoes echoed too loudly on the floor as I stepped inside. Boots were scattered in the hallway. One upright, the other kicked against the wall, leaving a scuff mark on the cream-colored wallpaper. The living room was a mess. Empty bottles of expensive cognac, pizza boxes crusted with mold, ashtrays overflowing, and on the kitchen table, unopened mail utility bills. Past due notices. I picked one up. Electricity, waternet. None of them paid. My hands were already shaking when I noticed the small white box beside the envelopes. Medication, heart drops, blood pressure pills. Prescribed to Vada 6 months ago. The seal was unbroken. A thin layer of dust coated the box. Dust doesn't lie. She hadn't taken them. Not once. Who are you looking for? I spun around. An elderly woman stood in the doorway, clutching her robe closed, eyes filled with concern. I'm Sterling's mother, I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. Where are they? Where's Vada? The woman sighed and shook her head slowly. Oh, honey, your boy? I don't know. Running the streets, I reckon. Music was blasting here until morning a few days ago. My heart pounded. And Vada. The woman's eyes softened. Ambulance took her. 2, maybe 3 days ago, she was unconscious, thin as a shadow. The room tilted. What hospital? I whispered. City General. That's where they take everyone. I don't remember leaving the apartment. I don't remember the ride. Only the burning thought repeating in my head, please be alive. Please be alive. City General Hospital smelled like bleach and despair. I pushed past the waiting room, past confused looks, straight to the admissions desk. Jefferson, I said. Vada Jefferson. A pause. Yes. ICU. My legs nearly gave out. They tried to stop me at the ICU doors. Family only. I am family, I said. Something in my eyes made the nurse hesitate. A doctor came out, tall, tired, glasses sliding down his nose. Are you the mother? Mother-in-law, I corrected. What's wrong with her? He took a breath. Advanced bilateral pneumonia. Severe dehydration, malnutrition. The words struck like bullets. She was alone, he continued, for days. If the neighbors hadn't called emergency services when they heard her collapse. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. When I saw her, I almost screamed. Vada lay motionless, tubes everywhere, skin stretched tight over sharp bones. She looked smaller than the pillow beneath her head. This was an illness. This was abandonment. I reached for the railing to steady myself. Can she hear? I asked. Sometimes, the doctor said gently. I took her hand. It was hot. Dry. You're not alone, I whispered. I'm here. I stumbled out of the ICU, lungs burning. Outside, the city glowed with evening lights. Cars rushed past. Life continued. And then, I saw him. A midnight blue SUV screeched around the corner. Music blasting. Windows down. Sterling behind the wheel. Laughing. 2 young women leaned out the windows, shrieking with delight. The car I had bought him. The car meant for family. He didn't even glance at the hospital. He roared past and disappeared into the city night. My phone buzzed. A message from Sterling. Hey ma. At the hospital with Vada. It's serious. Haven't left her side. Pray for us. I stared at the screen. The tears never came. Something else did. Clarity. Cold. Sharp. Final. I stood there for a long moment after reading that message. The glow of the hospital lights reflected off the glass doors behind me, and for the first time in my life, I realized something terrifyingly simple. I did not recognize my own son anymore. The boy I raised would never have lied so easily. The man I was looking at through that speeding car window had perfected deception. I didn't scream his name. I didn't chase the car. I didn't call him back. Instead, I did what 30 years of business and a lifetime of quiet endurance had trained me to do. I acted. I walked back inside City General with steady steps. My heart was racing, but my mind had gone eerily calm. The kind of calm that comes when grief finishes arguing with hope and finally gives way to truth. At the nurse's station, I asked for a private room. I need to make a call, I said. They led me to a small consultation office. Beige walls, a single chair, a desk scarred with years of paperwork and bad news. I closed the door behind me. Then I dialed the police. Yes, I said clearly when the dispatcher answered. I'd like to report a stolen vehicle. She asked for the details. Make, model, color, midnight blue, luxury SUV, owner's name. Mine, I said. There was a pause. And who took the vehicle? My son. Another pause. Does he have permission to use it? No, I replied. I never did. That wasn't anger speaking. That was fact. The car was registered in my name, paid in full by my accounts, insured under my policy. I had given him keys, not ownership. The dispatcher thanked me and assured me an officer would follow up. When I hung up, my hands finally began to shake. But I didn't regret it. Not for a second. The officer arrived less than an hour later. A young man, kind eyes, professional posture. I told him everything. About the messages, the lies, the ICU room upstairs. He nodded quietly and took notes. He said gently, "We'll locate the vehicle. Once we do, your son will be detained for questioning." I nodded. "Do what you need to do." Upstairs, the ICU hummed with mechanical life. Monitors beeped softly. Machines breathed where lungs could not. I pulled a chair up beside Vada's bed and sat with her through the night. I talked to her. About the weather back home. About silly things Sterling used to do as a child. About nothing and everything. Her face didn't move, but I held her hand anyway. At around 3 a.m., a nurse checked her vitals and leaned close to me. "She's strong," she whispered. "Stronger than she looks." I swallowed hard. "She shouldn't have had to be," I replied. Morning came slowly. The sun crept through the narrow ICU window like it was afraid to interrupt. Around 9 a.m., My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "We have your vehicle," the voice said. "Your son is in custody." I closed my eyes. "Thank you," I said. That was all. Sterling called me from jail an hour later. The sound of his voice startled me. Panicked. High-pitched. Childlike. "Mom." "What did you do?" he demanded. "I reported my stolen car." I replied calmly. "You had no right. I had every right." Silence crackled on the line. "You put me in jail," he shouted. "No," I corrected him. "You put yourself there?" He laughed bitterly. "You always do this. Control everything. Punish me when I don't live how you want." I thought of Vada upstairs, the feeding tube, the bruises along her arms, the unopened medication. "This isn't about control," I said quietly. "It's about consequences." That afternoon I returned to the apartment. This time, I wasn't a frightened mother. I was an investigator. I opened drawers, checked closets, looked behind doors. Vada was meticulous, organized, thoughtful, which meant the chaos I saw before was not her doing. In the bedroom, I found something that made my breath catch: a notebook. Plain black cover, tucked behind folded sweaters. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. The first page read, "If someone finds this, please believe me." My hands trembled. Page after page told a story I had never seen. The smiling photos on social media, the polished dinner parties, the vacations, all lies. Sterling controlled the money, controlled the thermostat, controlled who she spoke to. "He says heat is a luxury." One entry read, "I sleep in a sweater now." Another, "He took my card again. Says medication can wait." Another, "I'm scared to get sick. I don't think he would help me." I had to stop reading. I couldn't breathe. I flipped further. The entries grew shakier. Dates closer together, shorter sentences. "He didn't come home last night. No food left. I feel dizzy, cold." The last entry was barely legible. "If I don't wake up, please tell someone I tried." I pressed the notebook to my chest and sobbed. This wasn't neglect. This was slow violence. That night, Vada stirred. Just slightly. Her fingers twitched around mine. I leaned forward instantly. "Vada, it's me. I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open for a second. Fear flashed across her face. "Is he here?" she whispered. "No," I said firmly. "He's not." Her shoulders relaxed just a little. "He turned off the heat," she murmured. I was so cold. My heart shattered into pieces I knew would never fit back together. "I won't let him near you," I promised. And this time, I meant it with my whole soul. The next morning, called my lawyer. Then a third. By sunset, paperwork was in motion. Emergency power of attorney, protective orders, financial audits. I sold the car. Every dollar went into a medical trust for Vada. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and right. I rewrote my will. Sterling was removed. Completely. No appeals, no conditions. No one day if he changes. Some doors close forever, and they should. When Sterling was released on bail, he came straight to the hospital. Security stopped him at the entrance. He screamed, cried, collapsed onto the floor like a child denied candy. "I just want to see my wife!" I stepped forward. "She doesn't want to see you," I said. He looked up at me, eyes wild. "You ruined my life!" I looked down at him. "No," I replied. "You did!" And I walked away. The hospital became my world. Days blurred into nights, and nights dissolved into mornings without warning. The ICU lights never dimmed completely, and neither did the ache in my chest. I slept in a stiff chair beside Vada's bed, waking every time a machine changed its rhythm, every time her breathing faltered. I learned the language of monitors, the meaning of numbers, the quiet urgency in nurses' voices when something was not right. And through it all, one thought stayed constant: how close I came to losing her, without even knowing. The legal wheels turned faster than I expected. By the third day, the temporary restraining order was granted. Sterling was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Vada or the hospital. His calls went unanswered. His messages, angry, pleading, manipulative, were documented and forwarded to my lawyer. He alternated between rage and self-pity. One voicemail chilled me more than the rest. "You're choosing her over your own blood," he said. "Don't forget who your real family is." I listened to it once, then deleted it. Family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by who protects you when you cannot protect yourself. On the fifth morning, Vada woke up. Not briefly, not confused, but fully. Her eyes opened slowly, searching the room until they found mine. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. I pressed the call button, but she squeezed my hand gently, stopping me. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I thought I was dying," she whispered hoarsely. "I thought no one would come. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against hers. "You were never alone?" I said. "You just didn't know it yet." She cried quietly, the kind of crying that comes from surviving something you weren't sure you would. Recovery was not quick. Her body was weak. Her muscles wasted. Her confidence shattered. But her spirit surprised everyone. Each day she sat up a little longer. Each day she ate a little more. Each day she looked less afraid. The doctors called it resilience. I called it courage. Sterling did not take the silence well. With the apartment no longer accessible to him, and his accounts frozen pending investigation, his world collapsed fast. He showed up anyway. Not at the hospital. He knew better, at the condo. I wasn't there, but the building manager called me immediately. "He's banging on the door," she said, yelling, demanding entry. "Call the police," I replied calmly. By the time officers arrived, Sterling was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, his head in his hands. He looked small, lost, but not sorry. Later that day, I met him once, just once, at my lawyer's office. He came in disabled, unshaven, his expensive clothes wrinkled and stained. "You didn't have to destroy me," he said the moment he sat down. I folded my hands on the table. "I didn't destroy you," I replied. "I stopped protecting you from yourself." He laughed bitterly. "You always liked her more." That sentence broke something inside me. "I loved you enough to believe you," I said quietly. "That was my mistake." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. For the first time, he had no defense. The eviction notice was served the following morning. Sterling had 48 hours to remove his belongings. What little he still owned. He called me again that night, begging, "I'll change. I swear. Just help me this once." I thought of Vada shivering in the cold, of empty cupboards, of pages written in fear. "This was your last chance," I said. "You spent it." I hung up. 2 days later, I went to the apartment. Not for him, for her. I aired out the rooms, threw away the bottles, opened the curtains. Sunlight poured in like forgiveness. When Vada was strong enough to leave the hospital, this would be her home, her sanctuary. The day she was discharged, she walked out slowly, leaning on my arm. The sun warmed her face, and she closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. "I didn't think I'd ever feel safe again," she said softly. "You will," I replied. "This is only the beginning." She looked at me, eyes full. "Why are you doing this for me?" I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was layered. Because guilt, love, regret, and responsibility were tangled together. Finally, I said, "Because someone should have done it sooner." Sterling disappeared for a while after that. No calls. No messages. I later learned he had bounced between friends, couches, and short-term jobs that never lasted. People who once admired his charm grew tired of his entitlement. Charisma fades when consequences arrive. Weeks passed. Vada grew stronger. She painted again. Soft colors at first, gentle lines, then bolder strokes. One afternoon she handed me a small canvas. It showed a woman standing in light, her shadow behind her, no longer reaching forward. "I used to think shadows chased us," she said. "Now I think they're proof we're standing in the sun." I hugged her tightly. One evening, months later, I saw Sterling again. At a car wash, he was scrubbing wheels, soaked from head to toe, his shoulders hunched against the cold. Our eyes met. He didn't smile. He didn't apologize. He walked toward me slowly. "Can you help me?" he asked. I looked at the man he had become. Then I looked at the woman waiting for me across the street, stronger, smiling, free. "I already did," I said, and I walked away. Healing is not loud. It doesn't announce itself with celebrations or grand moments. Healing is quiet. It arrives slowly, often disguised as ordinary days where pain no longer controls every breath. For Vada, healing began with mornings. She started waking up before the sun, wrapping herself in a sweater, and standing by the window of the condo that was finally hers. She would watch the city wake up. Delivery trucks humming, birds gathering on wires, neighbors stepping out with coffee cups in their hands. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid of the day. And for me, healing came with guilt. I didn't expect that part. I had thought once the danger was gone, once justice was set in motion, my heart would rest. It didn't. Instead, it replayed memories. Sterling at 6 years old, missing his front teeth, proudly holding up a drawing he had made just for me. Sterling at 16, sulking because I wouldn't buy him a car, insisting the world owed him one. Sterling at 30, charming, confident, admired. Where did I fail him? That question followed me everywhere. One night, weeks after Vada returned home, I couldn't sleep. The condo was quiet. Too quiet. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where unopened bills once gathered dust, where neglect had lived so comfortably. Vada joined me silently. "You're thinking about him?" she said gently. I didn't deny it. "I raised him?" I replied. "I can't pretend I had nothing to do with who he became." She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "You didn't teach him cruelty," she said. "You taught him comfort without accountability. That's not the same thing." Her words landed heavily, because they were true. I had paid his debts, covered his mistakes, smoothed every sharp edge of life before it could cut him. And when consequences never arrive, empathy often never develops. That was my failure, not love. Protection without limits. The court proceedings moved quietly but steadily. Evidence from the diary, medical reports. Witness statements from neighbors. Sterling was charged, not with dramatic crimes that make headlines, but with something colder. Criminal neglect, financial abuse, domestic endangerment. The kind of charges that don't sound dramatic until you understand the damage they cause. He pled not guilty. Of course he did. The day of the hearing, Vada sat beside me. She wore a simple dress, her hair tied back, no makeup. She didn't want armor. She wanted truth. When Sterling entered the courtroom, he didn't look at us. Not once. His lawyer spoke of stress, of misunderstandings, of a marriage that simply fell apart. When it was Vada's turn, the room went silent. She spoke calmly, about the cold, about hunger, about being afraid to get sick, about realizing one night that if she collapsed, no one would come. By the time she finished, even the judge looked shaken. Sterling stared at the table. The ruling wasn't revenge. It was accountability, mandatory counseling, financial restitution, a permanent protective order. Not prison, but a record that would follow him, a truth that could no longer be erased. After court, Sterling approached us outside. Security stayed close. "I never meant to hurt you," he said to Vada. She looked at him steadily. "Intent doesn't erase impact," she replied. Then she turned to me. "I'm ready to go home." And we left. Life began to take shape again. Vada found a job at a local art center, teaching children twice a week. The first time she came home smiling, paint on her hands, I nearly cried. She laughed more, laughed freely. One evening, while cooking together, she hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything? Why did you choose me when he was your son?" The question cut deep. I put the knife down. "I didn't choose between people," I said slowly. "I chose between right and wrong." She nodded, eyes shining. "Then I'm glad you chose right." A month later, she called me Mom for the first time. Not accidentally, not emotionally. Deliberately, I didn't respond. I just hugged her. Some bonds are not born, they are forged. Sterling tried to rebuild. I heard about it from a distance, temporary jobs, short-lived apologies, stories where he was always the victim. He never asked how Vada was doing, only how I was, only what he had lost. That told me everything. One afternoon, while cleaning old files, I found the teddy bear I had brought on that first flight. Still unused. I handed it to Vada. She smiled softly. "I think it came at the right time," she said. That night, I stood on the balcony alone, city lights blinking below. I thought about forgiveness. People misunderstand it. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness is not access. Forgiveness is releasing the hope that the past could have been different. And I had finally released that hope.